Sugarcane League.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you can put it in there. Yeah. Thank you, Roger, and it's certainly good to be here today and talk to you a little bit about sugar and the things that we do in Louisiana. Maybe you'll learn a little bit. If you have questions and stuff, we'll have plenty of time after. Try not to ramble too much and leave some time for some interaction with you folks. So if you have any questions, just jot them down at the end. We'll be glad to address them. So a couple of things. So I'm a St. Mary Parish boy. I was raised in Franklin. So St. Mary Parish has always been really near and dear to my heart. My dad was a county agent in St. Mary Parish from like 1972 for about 20 years until 1992. So we still call Franklin home. Myself and my older brother, younger brother, and younger sister went to Hanson Memorial. So if any of you all remember Coach McCloskey, I'm one of those McCloskey boys. So yeah, he was a wonderful coach, and we spent great times in Franklin and here in St. Mary Parish. Lots of friends that went to LSU and got a degree in agriculture and spent time with some folks from here in Morgan City. So good to be with you. Good to be with you today and talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. Agricultural interests have always been important to me and my family. My father's dad was a sugarcane farmer in St. James Parish, and my mother's father was a rice farmer from Mamou. So between rice and sugar, and my dad being a county agent, my brother grew cane for a while. Plenty in our family that we owe to agricultural interest, and agricultural interest has treated our family very, very well. So let's talk. We'll do a couple of things today. We'll talk about sugar, the impact of sugar in Louisiana, and particularly in St. Mary Parish, and then we'll talk about a little bit about our organization, the American Sugarcane League. So sugar production in Louisiana is the #1 row crop for the state. There are a couple of other agricultural interests that are a little bit bigger, timber and poultry, believe it or not. Up in the northern part of the state, poultry is a very high valuable crop. But row crops, when you consider sugarcane, rice, cotton, corn, soybeans, all of that kind of stuff, sugar's by far the #1 row crop in the state. Really significant to what we do. So a little bit of information on the crop. You know, last year's crop, the 2023 crop, was a decent crop for us. There were areas in the state that did really well. As you move more to the south and to the east, those areas did really well. As you get past Iberia Parish, you can go out to the west into Vermilion, and some of those areas up to the north, those folks had a difficult year. So, but last year's crop, so you'll hear me talk about a couple of things today. First, we talk about tons of cane, okay? So we talk about tons of cane, that's the amount of cane that we produce. And then you hear us talk about tons of sugar. You know, we talk about this stuff all the time and sometimes don't take time to really explain a couple of things. So we talk about tons of cane and tons of sugar, and we also talk about pounds of sugar per ton of cane. That's kind of how much sugar is produced from a ton of cane. Last year in Louisiana, we produced about 15.8 million tons of cane. That's a lot of material moving through our mills. And from that 15.8 million tons of cane, we produced 1.9 million tons of sugar. Okay, 1.9 million tons of sugar. That's a very significant number. You know, what we do in our process, just to keep it quite simple and at a high level, we take cane in, it goes through some crushers, we extract the juice, we boil that juice, we boil it to the point where it gets really saturated, and it starts to form crystals in that saturation. We drop that material into what's like a washing machine, a centrifugal. It spins the juices out, and the sugar crystals are kept in that drum. We drop that sugar, that raw sugar, into a belt and send it into a warehouse, and we store it in the warehouses. Then as the refineries need that raw sugar during the year They call on it, and we deliver it from the raw sugar warehouses to the refineries. And at the refinery, they remelt that raw sugar. They draw the last molasses out of it, and that's what produces the white crystalline sugar that we have. Rivers Patu is here today. A couple of guys from the industry are here, and Rivers was gracious enough to bring some raw sugar for you. So there's some in the back on your way out. Take all you want, and Rivers will replenish whatever you're short. So that's kind of what we do. We take that sugar and we store it in the warehouses, just to give you some indication of how significant these warehouses are. These are massive facilities, and in Louisiana, we have about 45 or 50 gigantic warehouses situated throughout the state where we are storing 20% of America's domestic sugar supply. That's pretty significant. Here in Louisiana, we produce 20% of America's domestic sugar supply. All of that work creates 17,000 direct and indirect jobs, so it's critically important to the economic well-being of our state. Those jobs are supported by 450 cane farming families in the 11 raw mills that we have situated throughout the state. A little bit on St. Mary Parish in particular, and how St. Mary ranks. So in St. Mary last year, we produced cane on about 47,000 acres, just St. Mary Parish alone. And from that 47,000 acres, we produced 1.4 million tons of cane. And from that cane, 167,000 tons of raw sugar were produced from the lands in St. Mary Parish. Now there's some additional activity that goes on in the parish that's significant. So we have 2 raw mills in the parish. You have Sterling Sugars in Franklin, and then you have St. Mary Co-op, which is in Sorrel between Baldwin and Jeanerette along Bayou Teche. So those 2 mills, in addition to that 1.4 million tons of cane in St. Mary, they process another 1.2 million tons from outside the parish. So in essence, we're exporting sugar cane from outside the parish to be processed in the parish. So those 2 mills, when you combine the production in the parish and outside the parish, those 2 mills are producing 267,000 tons of raw sugar. That's a lot of sugar. That value of that sugar is $215 million. That's the pure farm gate, so that's the pure value of that cane, of that sugar that's in the warehouses. And when you use an economic multiplier on that, it's $650 million in economic activity that's produced or grown by the mills and the farmers in St. Mary Parish. Pretty significant. So 2.6 million tons of cane, we have a 100-day harvest season, right? We harvest cane for about 100 days, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. That 2.6 million tons in 100 days, that's 26,000 tons of cane processed every day at those 2 mills. That's a lot of material handling. A lot of moving parts go into that. That equates to between 500 and 600 loads of cane every day to each of those mills. So there's 500 or 600 trucks going in, 500 or 600 going out every day during that 100 days. Cane harvesting and sugar cane production in Louisiana is significant when it comes to material handling. Across the whole state, 6,000 loads of cane every day. So all of those trucks you see on the road are creating economic activity. I like to say, sometimes, unfortunately, there are things that we do that are a nuisance. Every business has something that it does that gets kind of nuisancey. But I like to tell people that when you see a cane truck, each one of them is delivering $7,000 in economic activity. every load of cane. So wouldn't you want to see more? It's very important to us here in the state. We're very proud of what we do. So let's switch gears just a bit. And one other thing with regards to the trucks, we've made some significant improvements in trucking and hauling cane. Our mills are doing great jobs creating environments for safer and better operations. We have GPS tracking on most every one of our trucks. We have cameras facing the forward of the truck and actually facing the driver so that we can see what drivers are doing. So we think we've made just great progress in making sure that everything that we do impacts the places where we live, work, and play just as least as possible. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk specifically about the American Sugarcane League and our organization. So we were founded in 1922 as the American Sugarcane League. And the reason, we've got cane production in Florida now. Texas was producing cane. This is their last crop. Hawaii was producing cane back in 1922. But in 1922, we claimed the name as the American Sugarcane League because in 22, Florida wasn't yet producing, maybe a little bit, but they weren't really commercially producing. Texas started producing in the 70s. Hawaii was producing cane way back, well before 1922, but they weren't yet a state in 1922. So hence the American Sugarcane League. Some of our friends in Florida think we should change our name and be the Louisiana Sugarcane League, but we ain't giving up the American Sugarcane League. It's an organization that's very, very well represented and recognized in circles far and near. So what does the League do? Our mission is to sustain success through effective research, positive legislation, promotion, public relations, and education. We're funded by dues from growers and millers and landowners. So we collect dues from growers and millers on a voluntary basis. Lots of other commodity groups may have check-off arrangements. We do not. Ours is voluntary. And we're very proud of the fact that every one of our raw mills in Louisiana participates at 100% level, and 98% of our growers contribute to the League. And that's just outstanding when you consider that they're doing that on a voluntary basis. So they see real value. Probably 75% or so of the landowners in the state contribute to our organization. So critically important to have that. And you folks are obviously in the midst of an organization here that does work on behalf of the betterment of industry. Chambers of Commerce do the same thing. And I was involved in the chamber in New Iberia for many, many years in the Industrial Development Foundation in Iberia. And when you consider that the League has about 98% participation from its interested parties, that's significant. And if we were able to get that kind of participation in all of the organizations that do betterment work, we'd really be able to get things done. So research first. Why do we grow sugarcane in Louisiana? We shouldn't be, but the reason we do is because research. So in Louisiana, we are growing sugarcane at the northernmost latitude in the world. Sugarcane is a tropical crop that's supposed to be grown along the equator. But we've been able to do research and to create varieties that work in Louisiana. Our varieties only work in Louisiana. They won't work in Florida, not in Texas or anywhere else. So we have to create varieties that work in Louisiana. A lot of interesting work. The League uses the majority of the funds that we get to support research and variety development. In addition to just the variety development and the agronomic work, we also do work at LSU through Audubon Sugar Institute to do processing research to figure out ways to get more sugar out of that cane. So research is really the lifeblood of our industry, and one interesting bit of information, it takes almost 15 years to create one new sugarcane variety. And the way you create new varieties of any plant is you cross a male and a female flower. Cane doesn't usually flower in Louisiana, so we have to trick it by putting it in these chambers where we change the day length. That makes the plants flower. So we may have a very vigorous, strong male that we really like, and we may have a female that's really, really sweet that we really like, but it's not vigorous enough, and the male isn't sweet enough. So we flower them and we cross them. And when we cross them, that cross can create as many as 100,000 seeds, and each of those seeds is unique and different, just like each child is unique and different. That's really unique about sugarcane. So we start planting those seeds, and over a 15-year period of selection, we're fortunate if we get one, maybe two, maybe three varieties out of that cross. So really significant and important to growing sugar in Louisiana. We do that work through LSU and through the USDA research station in Houma. Great facilities there. We're very busy in that area. We have 3 league agronomists on staff. So let's switch a little bit and talk about legislative advocacy and how we do things in that front. So I mentioned sugar production in Louisiana, in the U.S., and we produce about 20% of the domestic sugar production. Actually, sugar beets produce more more sugar, Beets produce more sugar in the U.S. than cane does. It's about a 55-45 split or so. But the beet growers and the cane growers work together under an umbrella organization in Washington called the American Sugar Alliance. Sugar policy is critical to the well-being of beet and cane growers, and certainly the well-being of Louisiana's sugar industry. The things that we undertake primarily are the Farm Bill and the sugar provisions inside of the Farm Bill. We're very active in that front. And then in addition to that, trade issues regarding sugar. So with regards to trade in America, through World Trade Organization commitments and free trade agreements, we are required to import sugar into the U.S. So we're required through those 2 mechanisms to bring sugar into the U.S. So we produce kind of the residual amount. So we're forced to bring sugar in, and we produce the residual amount. And what sugar policy does is it tells USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, that you can let those imports in, but only let enough in to keep the price at a balanced level. So USDA kind of balances the market for us. Sugar farmers don't receive any checks. Our policy simply allows USDA to keep foreign governments from dumping their sugar into the U.S. So sugar policy is a lot more complicated than that, but in essence, that's what it does. It's a market balancing tool that the Farm Bill has given to USDA. So a couple of other things. We're very active in Washington. The American Sugarcane League, as I mentioned earlier, is very active along with beet and cane growers all across the country. And there's a congressman from Hawaii. His name was Neil Abercrombie. He's no longer in Congress, but he left Congress and became the governor of the state of Hawaii. And he was a flamboyant kind of leftover hippie guy. But he was really, really interesting to talk to and to get to know and to listen to him talk. And when he was a congressman, he was speaking to us, and he said, never deny that you're a special interest when you're on the Hill, when you're on Capitol Hill. He said, because we all have special interests, whether we're doctors, attorneys, lawyers, pharmacists, farmers, you name it, we're all special interests. So he said, the key is not to deny your special interest, but to fashion your messaging so that your messaging is not just good for you, but good for the public. Okay? And that's what we do when we talk about sugar policy. Certainly sugar policy is good for Louisiana, it's good for beet and cane growers, but what we say is we do not want our country to become reliant on foreign governments to supply us with a critical food need. And that sells with mom and dad at home. So we create messaging where what we're looking for is good for America. It's good for the 17,000 jobs in Louisiana. It's good for the 142,000 jobs that sugar provides in America. So we use that, and we use it effectively. Secondly, he gave me 3 tenets. He said, be unified in your message. Be unified in your message. So we get together, sugarcane gets together, and we talk about issues, and we're in the midst of Farm Bill negotiations. We'll talk with our sugarcane brethren in Florida, and we'll hash out some things, and sometimes come into disagreements. And then we get together with the beet guys. They've done the same thing, and sometimes we get together and have to beat heads against the wall a little bit, but we end up coming with policies that are unified, and being unified is critical. And as Congressman Abercrombie said, you know, there's nothing more pleasing to a politician's ear, especially on Capitol Hill, than to hear his constituents coming to him asking for different things. And that gives him an easy out. All he's got to say is, once y'all get it figured out, come back and let me know what you want. Generally, they can't go back home and get it figured out. In sugar, we can. We have to. And so we're unified in our messaging on Capitol Hill. And then finally, he said you have to commit the resources. You have to commit the resources. Human resources, personal resources, and then the money. You got to commit the money. We're very active. We do fly-ins. We bring growers up to Washington. Beet guys bring their growers, and we'll call on the 465 House offices, 437 House offices, 100 Senate offices, and make our message known. The Farm Bill is moving right now. We extended it for a year, but it's moving right now. And as sugar, we think we're in really good shape on the Farm Bill, but it's a matter of moving the whole piece of legislation. You know, the nutrition parts of the Farm Bill, SNAP, food assistance parts are all inside of the Farm Bill. Those dollars take up almost 85% of the Farm Bill. So we call it the Farm Bill, but it's really the nutrition bill. But that's how you get things done in Washington. You know, we're not going to have urban people fighting for foreign policy. Farmers aren't going to fight for urban people, but if we put those two pieces of work together, maybe we'll get something done. So committing the resources. So in addition to just paying dues, our growers and millers pay PAC dues to the League. And we're very effective in supporting those who support us through political action committee campaigns, campaign commitments and funding. So we do commit the resources. So let me just close with a couple of little things. You know, St. Mary Parish has always had a long-standing support for the sugar industry. You know, sugar production started in St. Mary Parish in the early 1800s. The beginning of our commercial industry was in 1795 in New Orleans, and quickly moved out here along the Teche. And so St. Mary has been very, very critical to sugar production in Louisiana since our very, very beginning. Just an important place for us here in Louisiana. A couple of numbers at 60 million. 60 million. That's the number of American families that Louisiana sugar farmers provide sugar for. 60 million Americans. That's pretty significant. And here in St. Mary Parish and the growers and millers in St. Mary Parish produce enough sugar for 10 million Americans. It's kind of heartwarming to think that St. Mary Parish has that much of a significant impact on our country. And sugar is certainly a critical food item for our country. So with that, I'll kind of shut it down. I think all of the desserts are gone off the back table. There may be one left. If somebody wants to grab it, you know, I rely on sugar consumption for my paycheck, so we want to make sure that you're doing all you can to support us. So thank you very much. Sure.
Two questions.
Huh?
The first one, beets are grown in Louisiana?
No, beets are grown in the upper Midwest.
All right. Second question. You said, I think you said that this was Texas's last production?
Yep. Yeah.
No more cane in Texas?
No. Texas, so there's one mill in Texas, and they represent Texas's production was about 10% of what Louisiana's was. Their industry has been struggling for a couple of years, but last year was a final straw that kind of broke their back. The Rio Grande Valley is where the mill is in Texas, and they were relying on water rights from the Rio Grande, and there was a dispute, a trade dispute, and a dispute with Mexico over water rights, and Mexico withheld water and really starved the Rio Grande Valley, not just sugarcane production, but other production. And they just had a horrible crop because they have to irrigate in Texas, and they didn't get water to get their crop going. So
I guess the third question: how many mills in Louisiana?
11 raw mills, and we have 2 refineries. One refinery south of New Orleans in Chalmette, the Domino Refinery, and then up the river in Gramercy, a refinery called Louisiana Sugar Refining, LSR, in Gramercy. So those are the 2 refineries that receive our raw sugar and produce white sugar. Sure.
Can you talk about diversification? I understand that a particular farmer might plant several different crops. Can you speak to that?
Most cane farmers are planting mostly sugar cane. So we rotate our crop like once every 4 years.
I meant like
Varieties?
drought resistant varieties.
Oh yeah, varieties. Sure. Yeah. So yeah, we have different varieties. We have about 10 or 12 varieties right now that are available for farmers to choose from. Some may have some older varieties, so there may be a few more out there than that. And there are certain varieties that perform better in certain areas and certain soil types. Like clay soils, some varieties do better there, and sandy soils, some varieties do better there. When you get into the northern reaches of the sugarcane belt, up close to Bunkie, just south of Alexandria, those guys like varieties that are hardy to cold tolerant. So they'll use some different varieties there. So there's a number of different things that growers use when selecting varieties that they want to put on a certain field. Yep.
Bunkie's the farthest north.
Just about. Actually, there's a little bit of cane in the south part of Alexandria.
Follow up to that question. Would a grower make like a bet, let's say, about, hey, this year's going to be a wetter year than normal, so we don't need a drought-resistant variety, or you take that risk, or do they pretty much, assume that if you think it's drought resistant, it may have some sort of drawback somewhere else. Maybe it's not as sweet as other varieties might be.
Yep. So one thing that's unique about sugar is we can't get in and out of the sugar business. You plant, so we plant the stalks. That's, we don't plant seed. If anyone ever asks you how many seeds does a farmer plant in sugarcane, you say 0. We don't plant seed. We plant the stalks in the ground. Remember I told you that cross that we make and all the seeds are different? So anytime there's seeds in sugarcane, they're all different. So when we get a variety, the only way to propagate that variety is by the stalk. And the plants that come off of the stalk are all the same. So we plant stalks, we plant those varieties, and so you can't, you can't make a decision that I'm going to plant this variety because it's drought tolerant, because you're growing on that cane is producing for 3 or 4 years. And so it's just a matter of what variety may work for you in a soil type or in a northern climate. But to say that you think there's going to be a drought year and you're going to plant a different variety, you can't. And that's one thing that's unique about sugar is you just can't get in and out. All of our equipment is very unique to what we do. It's not like soybeans where price of beans goes up and everybody plants beans. You can't do that with cane. It's a long-term commitment, very, very capital intense. To be in the sugar business.
What's a flower look like?
A what?
A flower.
Oh, it's kind of like roseau cane. You ever see the flowers on a roseau cane? In the marsh?
Yeah.
The little whippy kind of flowers. That's kind of what it looks like, something like that. Yeah.
Which parish is the largest producer of sugar?
Actually, it's Point Capee now. Yeah. Point Capee. In the last 5 years, acreage in Louisiana is actually going up a little bit, and it's going up to the north and to the west, but primarily to the north. And now Point Capee has become the largest sugarcane producing parish in the state. They probably started taking that position about 5 years ago. Before that, Iberia and St. Mary were right neck and neck, but now Point Capee is significantly ahead. They got about 75,000 acres in Point Capee. Great lands and good farmers up that way. Really good soils. That's where the Red River, the Atchafalaya, and the Mississippi all come together. And in Louisiana, the richest soils are closest to the rivers and bayous, and so they've got some really good soils up there. Good producers.
How much have you seen yield go up in your career?
So I've been with the league for 20 years. and probably, I don't know, 30%. Yeah, and a lot of factors, just variety development, but growers like using precision leveling to level their fields. So so they have a lot more ditches to get water off. Now they're able to precision level fields and have fewer ditches, so there's more cane on per acre. Farming is becoming really, really advanced and technical. Farming today isn't my dad or my grandfather's farming. It's very, very technical. I mean, you're dealing with tractors and pieces of equipment that are $500,000, $750,000, lots of expensive equipment that can do all kinds of things. We're trying to figure out how to make those things work as best they can. But precision agricultural stuff using drones to image fields, really interesting. Then take a drone and image a field, and then use some mapping off of that drone to like infrared mapping, and they take that digitized data, and they can put it in a variable rate fertilizer applicator, and as you're going through the field, vary the amount of fertilizer you're putting in the field based upon that mapping. In cotton and soybeans and corn, they actually have planters, and as it's going through the field, they may have it loaded with a couple of different varieties. It'll change varieties as it's moving through the field in corn and stuff. Really advanced stuff, and so there's opportunity in farming, in agriculture, and we're even seeing young ladies come back onto the farm to help with all of this GPS stuff and manage our operations. So it's an interesting time in the business. We're fortunate that the sugar business is healthy right now.
Where's the mill in Point?
Alma Plantation. It's just south of the lake there. Well, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to come and speak with you folks.
Thank you, Jim. Very informative presentation. Let me also introduce Lieutenant Greg Ellison with Clay Higgins' office, and also Christian Bergeron with Garrett Graves' office. Thank you all very much for coming, because it's very important that our representatives get around a group of this many people in a particular area, and they become informed by you. So it's very important, and we thank you very much for your time. Next month, it'll be June 10th. Our guest speaker will be Ms. Susan Bonnet Bourgeois, Secretary of the Department of Louisiana Economic Development, LED. Very good speaker. And in ending, don't forget to pick up the sugar on the way out from the Patus. Thank you very, very much.